books on a pedestal above other forms of communication, of information, of entertainment. I often wonder whether we would see books as, there is still a societal feeling that books are more important than the computer, than the internet, than the television, than all of the access to modern media. And it's because it's the traditional form. It's one of the oldest, and I'm not saying I love books, I love the feel, the smell, the ability to read a book. But I often wonder how the world would have perceived books if computers had come before books. Would we see books as the new technology that was a bit non-academic, and computers as actually the traditional model? So for me, the important thing is books are wonderful things, and they should be enjoyed, and they should be entertaining, and they should be informative, and all the things that books are. They're a sensory experience. We can feel them, we can touch them. They weigh. They smell, don't they, new books? There's a wonder about books. There's a magic about the way books can transport you to other places, that they can inform in the ways that other media can't. What we mustn't do, though, is tell children that books are better than any other form of communication. Because we know children, we've all been there, haven't we? If an adult tells us something's important, what do we do when we're children? We move away from it. And what we mustn't do is hold books up as some vestige of great academia, I believe. What we have to do is allow children to explore books for the joy of what they are, not for seeing it as purely an academic pursuit.
Tengo muchas preguntas para usted. Me gustaría que nos explicara un concepto del que usted ha hablado, el concepto del alumno como cliente.
Well, where I'm coming from with that is this: education lives and dies by how engaged our students are in our schools. We can build fancy buildings. We can have dynamic lessons. We can have highly intellectual and intelligent teachers. But the point is, unless the children buy into what we're trying to provide for them, education's nothing. Unless our children see the importance, they see the value, they see that education is a life-changing part. Let's face it, it's the most important commodity in humanity. But the interesting thing for me is this: our children are governed by a world of branding and marketing and advertising. Take Harry Potter, for example. The interesting thing with Harry Potter is the best-selling book the world's ever seen comes at a time where we're told children don't read anymore. Why is that? It's because of marketing. It's because what the people behind Harry Potter did was they built something irresistible that every child wanted to be part of. And to me, that's the issue around education. Our children live in a world where brands like Nike and Apple are brilliant at sucking our children in and making their products so desirable that every child wants one. And I think what we have to remember is we do not have a divine right, because education is so important, to assume that children understand its importance too. And I think what we have to do is realize in this world of sophisticated consumers that we have to make sure that education is as an exciting a lifestyle for our children as a PlayStation or an iPhone or a computer. And that's why I think we need to see them as our clients. We spend too much time with education, making sure our politicians are happy, making sure our parents are happy, making sure our universities are happy. And that leaves children right down at the bottom of the list of who our clients are. And my argument is our clients should be the number one customer, because if they don't buy our product, education's dead.
Claro que el problema ahí es cuando uno se tiene que enfrentar, ya no digo a la administración, a los padres. ¿Qué pasa cuando esos padres te piden resultados? Porque te los piden.
Well, again, the interesting thing is education is one of those extraordinary areas of life where everyone feels they're an expert because everybody's been through school. It's interesting, isn't it? You wouldn't hear parents tell a heart surgeon how to carry out heart surgery. But you'd hear parents tell teachers how teachers should teach. And one of the interesting things for me is this, that there is we can only base our judgments on our own experience. And if when we were children, we went through an education experience that we perceived was successful for us, then it's inevitable that we want the same things for our children. What we know of all parents is they want their children to succeed. They want their children to have successful, happy futures. What I think we need to do is to help parents understand that there's been a paradigm shift in what that future is. We need to engage parents in understanding what the world's like for our children now and in the future and reverse the argument. Then we can talk about how we need to change education to meet real aspirations for our parents and their children.
Lo pone usted complicado. La primera tarea es educar a los padres para luego educar a los hijos, ¿no? Lo que pasa que en el mundo en que vivimos nos piden esos resultados, no solo los padres, nos los piden para ganar puntos para una oposición o para acceder a una beca de investigación, que es otra de las cuestiones que se han planteado en las preguntas que nos han enviado a través del móvil.
Absolutely. And you know, the interesting thing is, and I think it's been brought into focus by the events of the last 3 or 4 years, we're in a world where the standard systems of business and commerce have collapsed. And when you hear the great experts talk about how do we ensure these things don't happen in our future, they all talk about entrepreneurship. They all talk about small businesses and people leading a more entrepreneurial life, so less of a corporate life, less of a life where you take a job, you do that job for life, you build within one organization and you hit outcomes. It's more about taking risks, it's more about creativity, and it's more about looking for open-ended opportunities, entrepreneurship. What's really interesting is when you look at the great entrepreneurs of the Western world, most of them failed in formal education. And that's a really interesting point that I don't think governments understand. That actually entrepreneurship requires a different mindset. It requires different skills. It requires a more expansive journey. And my argument is that if we're to fulfill that legacy, if we're to ensure that our children have got that successful future, then we need to think differently about outcomes. We need to realize that actually, for example, making mistakes is the currency of how we learn. You know, one of the things I think I've learned in the 20 or so years I've been an educator is that you learn nothing new from getting something right. You only ever learn something new from the point of a mistake, the realization you can't do something or you don't know something. So if all we do in our lives is strive for certainties, what happens is we close our own journeys down, because then what we do is we only do as we get older the things we know we can do. And this is the point about entrepreneurship in its biggest sense. Great entrepreneurs will always take a step into the dark, knowing that even if they fail, they'll learn to do it better next time. And I think that's the key message around what we have to do within education if we're to create entrepreneurs, not just financial entrepreneurs, but social entrepreneurs, and the kind of people we need to drive our future forwards.
Para eso hay que perder muchos miedos, ¿no? Como sociedad y como individuos y como educadores.
Absolutely right. And you know, one of the big things that I say often to educators is this is seismic.